What's a sign that someone grew up poor? Story 1. I was invited to go to Disney World with my best friend in high school. I did that for the first part of the week in every restaurant we went to, usually ordering a cheeseburger while my friend and his parents were ordering big-ass steaks and all sorts of seafood. My friend's dad stopped me when we were walking back to the hotel and asked if I was a picky eater. I told him no. He asked why I kept ordering the same thing every time we went out. I said, well, that's what I usually order when I go out to eat, and didn't want to order anything more expensive because it wasn't my money. He kinda chuckled, assured me that he wasn't going to run out of money, and permanently banned me from ordering a cheeseburger when I was on a trip with them unless we went to somewhere that specialized in burgers. I spent the rest of that trip eating lobster, crab and steak. Edit. Fixed fat finger mistake. Story 2. The story of my life. Having to explain to people that just because I grew up in a certain area doesn't mean I grew up with the same luxuries they did. I had classmates whose parents purchased or handed them down foreign luxury vehicles before they could even legally drive. That's how much money they had. I distinctly remember a group of affluent kids bragging in a circle about whose dad has the most money. One of them, in an attempt to win this superficial game, said, "Oh yeah, my dad's so rich, I could crash my Cadillac and he'd buy me the latest Mercedes-Benz." I kid you not. My dude, that was back in 2018, and he came back with a 2019 Mercedes-Benz the very next day, expressionless face. Needless to say, we lived extremely different lives. I lived in one of the smallest houses in town, and grew up in a paycheck-to-paycheck household as my dad claimed bankruptcy during the 2000s recession. I grew up feeling guilty for birthdays/Christmas because I knew although I wanted something, it only put my parents further behind on necessary expenses. Yet again, I'm constantly explaining to people in this town and ones who know where I'm from that we're not all rich here. Story 3. I remember one Christmas my mom basically sat my older brother and I down and told us we wouldn't be getting much for Christmas because she was getting our kid brother a bunch of stuff that he asked Santa for. I don't remember caring that much either. I've had people tell me that was wrong of her. And maybe it was. But what would anyone else do if they had 2 teenagers and a 4-year-old in a Christmas situation like that? Edit. I do believe my mom did the right thing. I'm not sure if that was clear. Edit 2. I honestly don't think my little bro knows anything of that. And he's now 17. And I will probably never tell him. Story 4. We were in bad financial times when the latest teenager my father had married had taken off, leaving him a single father with their younger 2 kids and me at home. My mother had some mental issues and was in and out of my life. So yeah, things weren't fun. I was a teenager and my younger brother and sister were still little and in elementary school. It was a shit year and we were broke and were often playing utility roulette. We thought Christmas wasn't going to happen. Then my dad got a $125 bonus check from work on Christmas Eve. We went to Walmart late that night and made the best of it for my 2 younger siblings. I told him not to worry about me. I was fine. And to spend it on making a decent Christmas for the little ones who still believe in Santa. Christmas is a big deal to my dad and her liked keeping the magic alive. I knew it mattered to him a lot too. A few days later, one of my dad's old friends showed up with a bag from Wilson's with a leather jacket in it as a Christmas present for me. She had heard about me getting nothing in lieu of the little ones and wanted to do something nice. I had never had something so nice. My own leather jacket. I actually cried. I wore that jacket for years and I still have it hanging in my closet over 20 years later. I can't quite part with it even though the leather isn't in great shape and it doesn't fit. My husband bought me a J.Crew jacket a few years ago that cost quadruple if not more what that leather jacket cost so many years ago. And while I was happy, it just didn't hit the same. It's a happy memory to have, even if bittersweet. I understand why you believe your mom did the right thing. Story 5. I didn't go on the 8th grade field trip to Washington, D.C. because we couldn't afford it. I told everyone it was because we lived there for a year so I had seen it already. Partially true. We did live there. We were also poor while living there, so we didn't do anything. Edit for all the people telling me museums are free. We lived on Bolling Air Force Base. Both my parents were military. Worked full-time jobs. Served our country. And pursued their degrees to give us, their 4 kids, a better life. We lived there for a year before being stationed on Fort Sheridan in Illinois. Time is also an incredibly limiting factor when you have to constantly work, and it shows how privileged some of you are. Story 6. I didn't grow up super poor. More lower middle class. As far as dental work, it was basically emergency only. I always thought that people who could afford braces were pretty well off. I paid for my own as an adult. And made sure that all of my kids had them. My older sister hasn't been so fortunate. She is missing a lot of teeth and has full bottom dentures. She would have to become very wealthy at this point in her life to overcome the damage that's already been done. To me, teeth are a status symbol in the U.S. People with straight, white teeth that are their own teeth are either lucky or they have been able to pay for it. Story 7. My teeth are pretty fucked up. I was able to get them fixed with Invisalign thankfully, but I never had real health insurance or dental care as an adult until I was in my late 30s. Even so, most of the damage was done and can't be fixed. Even though they are straight now. I was horrified and embarrassed to finally go to a dentist. Answering their questions about how often I got cleanings and telling them that I couldn't remember. I only had dental care as a kid when my parents had me under their insurance. So I broke down and told them I fucking live in the US. People don't have insurance here, so sorry, I can't tell you anything else. They understood and did their best, but the point is, it sucks that having teeth that are not destroyed is a status symbol. I am learning to smile for the first time in my life, still look awkward AF, so at least I have that going for me. Story 8. This one hits close to home. I'm paying out the ass as an adult, in my mid-30s, because dental care is so expensive. As a kid, my dental health was okay. But I didn't get braces and some other things done when I should have, and that has led to problems. As an adult, even with health insurance for a large majority of adulthood, it was too expensive to get anything done. Now I'm stuck in a loop of paying exorbitant amounts to fix emergency problems, having nothing left to deal with fundamental issues, then having to do it all again a few years later. It's one of the things that affects both my mental health and physical health the most. But there's very little I can do about it because of how costly it is. Edit. A few words. Story 9. That also can happen if you live through a natural disaster, where food wasn't freely available to acquire, or there was no way to prepare it. I lived through a natural disaster where there was no to on and off again hydro power. Very little food and you got no say in what you got, and there was nothing fresh as it all went bad. And some days were -40°C. The only way to get your food was to bundle up and hike for it. We were completely cut off from society. So supplies couldn't get to us, as is in our smaller town, until the army arrived in tanks, as those were the only vehicles that could easily get over all the downed trees. If you could look past all the destroyed trees, it was actually really beautiful. I hiked. Well, slid, as walking was impossible. From tree to tree, tree for hours to get to a friend's house to see if any of her beloved pets survived. Only the 2 dogs and cat survived as they huddled together in a room. The rest were frozen solid. I removed the dead to the back of the barn so no one would have to see them all. Once things started to thaw, we buried the ones that weren't eaten by wildlife in the pet cemetery. It was impossible to dig a grave sooner, as the ice was too thick and the snow was deep and frozen solid too. My worst issue is hoarding food. But not in a gross way. I have enough ready-to-eat foods. Or limited cooking needs, boiling water, to feed my family of 3 very well for 1 year plus. And enough to feed the 2 dogs as well, but they'll have to go mostly vegan with meat stocks. None of it needs refrigeration or freezing. Not even the meats. Story 10. A personal anecdote. For backstory, I'm the primary financial provider for my wife and I. But I really don't care what she does with our money. If our bills are paid and we have food to eat, I'm fine. I grew up fairly poor, so I never really bought anything for myself, or asked for anything to be bought for me. A few months ago, a video game I had wanted to play was on sale for like $2.50. And I said to my wife, "Hey, can I buy this?" Not really because I wanted permission, but because I hadn't logged in to check our financial state and didn't know if the money was already set aside for bills. But she looked at me and said, "Did you just ask permission to buy a $2.50 game with your own money?" So I'd say the hesitance to buy anything for yourself, regardless of how stupidly cheap it was,